Good morning and a big warm welcome to the Big Ask. I really do hope you're keeping safe and well in these turbulent times. But firstly, a big thank you for taking the time to join us on this journey this morning. I really do appreciate that it's only about 5 weeks ago that many of you opened your retail stores for the first time after the lockdown. So thank you for taking the time out, and we hope you'll find this interesting and informative. By way of introduction, my name is Rob Sandford and I head up business here at O2. Myself and my team are delighted and honoured that we look after about 500 enterprises right the way across the UK. It's our job to actually help these enterprises get back into productivity after the lockdown. And I'm also delighted to say that of the enterprises we look after, retail is by very much the largest sector that we look after. We've had relationships with many of you over the last few years, from supermarkets to fashion, right the way through to the online businesses. And it's our pleasure and honour to serve you on a day-by-day basis. I'd also like to say a big welcome to Richard Lim, who's joining us this morning. Richard is the Chief Exec of Retail Economics, and together we'll take you through the Big Ask report, a report into how retailers are responding to the changing customer market. Richard is a well-known commentator in the retail market and actually brings a wealth of experience to this project. So welcome aboard, Richard. So before we crack on with the presentations, I'd like to just quickly run you through the agenda for this morning and take you through what we're going to cover. So first and foremost, we'll go through why we've gone on to this journey and what we wanted to achieve. And then we'll detail the two main factors that we've structured the analysis around: the customer journey and the customer segments. The majority of the day, as you see, will be covered by the in-depth deep dive analysis, conclusions and recommendations for each of the 5 stages of the customer journey, right the way through from awareness through to after sales and the costly part of returns. Richard will then close up with some concluding remarks, and hopefully we'll have a good chunk of time to take your questions and answers. And if we don't get a chance to answer the questions you've posed, we will of course get back to you after the event. So without further ado, let's make a start. What we will have is plenty of time, as I said, at the end for questions and answers. But also during the session that Richard will be hosting, we'll have a couple of polls to get your insight into what is changing in the market. So hopefully that combined with the Q&A will mean this is a very, very interactive. So please, ask questions, challenge us, and we look forward to actually helping you on that journey. So hopefully this morning will be enthralling, engaging, and informative. But please, as I say, don't hesitate to challenge us on that journey as well. So what is today all about? Well, earlier this year, O2 and Retail Economics commissioned some research. And the idea of it was to take a deep dive into modern retail customers and to really understand what they think about the channels they buy from and how they're going to use them. Who did we ask? Well, we didn't just ask O2 customers. We asked customers right the way across retail, from fashion, homewares, supermarkets, and even hardware. We asked their views on what their purchase habits are now and also how they've changed actually. We really wanted to give you, the retailers, an honest, insightful picture of the connected customer, helping them understand how the market has changed as a result of digitization, omni-channel, competition, and yes, we even included COVID-19. After all, it's only by taking a step back and thinking critically about the effect that these fundamental market changes have had that we can serve customers in the most professional and personalized manner. The Big Ask is all about going out and asking the big questions to better understand the customers who walk through your door or visit your online stores. So what did the research cover? As I said in the agenda, we covered the 5 stages of the customer journey, from awareness through research to payment, fulfillment, and then finally the returns and then crucially the after sales service. It's a joint project. Stakeholders from O2 and Retail Economics have worked together on it to delve into the data and to pull out some really actionable insights and relevant work. Well, what did we find? Well, Richard will go through this in far more detail, but we found some really surprising trends from our own point of view. We've also looked at the way that retailers are already adapting successfully to these changes, and we look forward to sharing some of these stories with you. You'll see a story later about how our O2 store in Sunderland has adapted since opening up from the pandemic and the measures that we've taken, but also how the customers are reacting to those changes. So the question is, why did we partner with Retail Economics? Well, as I've said, Richard is very much a respected commentator in the retail market, and Retail Economics themselves really understand this market and understand what they're talking about. They've got a rich history in looking into trends and helping companies improve decision-making to make better service to their customers. I don't want to steal all of Richard's thunder because he'll introduce himself in a second. But let me just conclude by talking about the report. We will share the report with you after today, but you'll see it's a way of resegmenting your audience into 3 customer groups based on the value that they place on connectivity. As I say, Richard's going to take you through the journey and when it comes to their buying habits. But again, I want to say a big thank you for taking the time out to join us this morning on The Big Ask. And again, I hope it's rich and rewarding. So let me pass over with further ado to Richard. Richard.
Okay, thanks, Rob. That's really appreciated. Just a really quick introduction from me. I'm Richard Lim. I am the CEO of Retail Economics. Retail Economics is an independent economics consultancy, but with a difference. We put economic analysis, econometric modelling, but really importantly, behavioural economics at the heart of the insight that we offer the industry. I'm absolutely delighted to be here today to launch the Big Ask research with O2. And I think it's fair to say that in terms of timing, it's never been more important to reimagine the customer journey. The impact of COVID-19 has set about a wave of seismic structural changes that are going to sweep through the industry over the coming months. Never before has a single event had such a wide-ranging impact across businesses, across households, and across financial markets. And we're going to explore how some of this has had such a significant impact on the customer journey too. Many of the underlying changes that we experienced COVID-19, and so it seems worthwhile to put in context some of these underlying structural changes that the industry has faced over the last few years. I think first and foremost, it's really important to emphasise the impact that continued migration to online has had on the retail industry. But more significantly, it's about the pace of that shift towards online. We only have to go back 12 years to launch of the first iPhone. And at that point, 5% of retail sales were online. Fast forward to last year, and that proportion had risen to 20%. And we actually forecast that this proportion is going to rise to 25% in 2020. A lot of this will be because of the impact of COVID-19, social distancing restrictions, and the closure of non-essential retail that has necessitated that shift towards online. And for many consumers, this shift will become a permanent part of their shopping, of a new shopping behaviour. Secondly, experiences and the experience economy will become much more critical too. And actually, if you look at the proportion of spending, if you look at the proportion of household expenditure going on retail over the last few decades, it has continued to decline. And actually, people are shifting more of their spending towards experiential pursuits. At the same time, this has been set against a context of rising operating costs for retailers, and these costs are coming through things like national living wage, national minimum wage, and all of that is colliding with these structural changes in digital, and that's and with the backdrop of COVID-19, we are emerging into a new normal for retail. The pressures to shift business models towards a more digital-centric positioning has never been more critical for retailers. And they really need to leverage connectivity and technology to pivot their business models to align to a new set of customer expectations that we're going to see in the market, and the new relationships that consumers want to form with retailers and brands. And this has undoubtedly put business models under pressure, but it's going to be the pace of change that is going to be so testing. And put simply, for many retailers, they are burdened with too many stores, too much space, they're dealing with inflexible lease structures, and this is really inhibiting their ability to pivot business models towards this more digital-centric proposition. Significant investment will be needed for many retailers, and this is coming at a time when margins are already under a lot of pressure. And actually, if you take the top 150 retailers in the UK, over the last 10 years, pre-tax profit margins have halved. They've fallen from about 8% to 4%. And the pressure towards digital isn't going to ease. If anything, it's going to intensify. And actually, we forecast that in the next 10 years, 50% of non-food retail will shift online, and there will be 5 driving forces behind the continued shift. Firstly, technology, and in particular AI, will continue to play a driving force shifting sales towards online. And actually, when you ask consumers what are the main barriers inhibiting them to do further shopping online, it all revolves around delivery. People want faster, cheaper, and easy returns. And technology is already going a long way to solve some of these issues. Artificial intelligence has been around for many years, but it's been the explosion of big data that's really been able to power these artificial intelligence to really drive out some significant insights and actually have a tactical influence on the way retailers are looking at things like marketing strategies, as an example. But as artificial intelligence will evolve, there'll be a number of key changes that this will have on the retail industry. This is likely to include things like auto replenishment models, automated driverless vehicles, AI-powered marketing, sales, and really data-driven and really powering data-driven decision-making across many other uses too. Secondly is around physical retail, and actually physical retail is going through a period of intense disruption and going through a period of a painful readjustment. And COVID-19 will only accelerate the process. Over the last 5 years, we've seen a consistent fall in the net number of stores operated by large multiple retailers, and we expect this to continue. Demand for retail space is at the lowest level since 2007. And actually, if you look at things like investor sentiment, rental demands for the retail sector, and actually just interest in the retail property market, they're all pretty much at decade lows. And prior to the pandemic, our estimate was that there was about 20% too much retail space in the market, given the structural changes that have happened over the last few years. And we expected that to fall out of the market over a 10-year period, but this is going to be accelerated. Thirdly, we will have more powerful devices and better connectivity. And actually, the emergence of 5G will make connectivity speeds much greater, and combined and dovetailed with more powerful devices, we expect this to have a significant impact on shopping on the move. And 5G is expected to be about 10 times faster than 4G. A really good example of this already is the commuter population. And actually, if you look at commuters, in 2019, over 50% of them said that they had purchased something on the move while they were commuting into work on the train. So people are already, the behaviours of shopping on the move are already deeply ingrained into our shopping populations. And also, these factors are already changing retailers' propositions, and we've already seen an emergence of new business models from retailers. So things like the sharing economy, where we've seen rental markets and secondary markets become more commonplace, mass personalisation at scale, rental subscriptions, and service economy are all models that we expect to flourish over the coming years, all being powered by this advancement in technology. And finally, a new cohort of online consumers. What our research showed was that there are about 45% of shoppers that have purchased something online for the first time since the lockdown. So this is 45% of shoppers that have broken through some of the barriers that were previously inhibiting them to shop online. They've broken through barriers of setting up online accounts, entering payment details, and even in some cases, overcoming issues of trust. And it's tempting to think that a high proportion of this new cohort of online shoppers is actually older consumers that have been forcibly pushed online to get access to the products that they need. But actually, the correlation between this new wave of online shoppers and age is actually pretty weak. And what we think is that a more accurate label for this is the consumers that are slow adopters. And actually, what this presents is a huge opportunity for retailers to reach out to this new cohort of online shoppers and adjust their propositions, and it can really leverage significant opportunities for them going forwards. Of course, all of this has made the customer journey infinitely more complex to understand and measure. And it's not uncommon for consumers to unconsciously bounce between physical and digital realms, often at the same time, finding a path to the products they want in a kind of a frictionless manner in the way that they want. And if we take buying a pair of jeans as a simple example, when I was in my teens, which wasn't so long ago, the purchasing journey for buying a pair of jeans was very analog. You know, I would walk onto a shop on the high street, say Burton's. I would look at jeans on the shelf that happened to be of the right size, the right color, and the right fit. But my choices would be restricted to the physical experience that I had in store. But nowadays, consumers and brands can talk directly to their consumers through a number of digital platforms, social media, giving retailers and brands an opportunity to curate conversations with their customers and bring awareness of new products. If we take Instagram as an example, Topshop have got about 10 million Instagram followers, ASOS have got about 10 million, Levi's have got about 7 million Instagram followers. Zara have got 40 million Instagram followers. They're able to inspire consumers to bring awareness of new products, but actually consumers still want to have a physical experience. And increasingly, this is in flagship destinations like Birmingham's Bullring, Leeds Trinity, the Westfields in London, or Oxford Street. They still want to have that immersive shopping experience, and actually window shopping remains a critical part of that awareness part of the customer journey. But then consumers might then continue their customer journey online. They might leave the store, and on the way home on the bus, they might get out their smartphones, price compare to different websites, look at their favorite retailers, and then they might receive an email directly from a manufacturer or brand. Let's say Levi's, for example, offering them 10% off, free shipping. They order 4 pairs of jeans with the intention of keeping one of them. They get them delivered to their local Collect Plus store that's just down the road from where they live. They try on the 4 pairs of jeans using their bedroom like a changing room, and they return the other 3 pairs of jeans that they don't want to the local high street where they've got a Levi's store while they're having lunch and coffee with friends. And it's this increasingly complex customer journey that's made measuring and understanding consumers that much more difficult for retailers. But really importantly, the mobile phone and connectivity touches every single point of that customer journey. And we've used the 5 stages of the customer journey as a framework and as a bedrock for the research that we've conducted around the connected customer. We surveyed the opinions of over 2,000 nationally representative households, and we segmented these consumers, creating a new cohort based around the perceived value of connectivity. And actually, the correlation that we found was pretty astonishing, which we'll go into in a second. But using perceived value as this new cohort of connectivity revealed some fascinating insights that I'm going to talk about now.
Traditional demographic metrics like age, location, and gender are solid starting points. Aiming a particular product at older, more affluent consumers, for example, implies a different sales strategy than for younger consumers who don't have as much disposable income. However, our Big Ask research unveils a new way of segmenting and telling your customers apart with their attitudes towards connectivity. The number of devices, the amount of time, and the effortless way we connect to the digital world has changed immeasurably over the last few years, and this has had a dramatic impact on the way we consume content. Whether we're binge watching box sets at the weekend with our families, keeping up to date with the latest news on our phones, or using wearable devices to help us get into shape, being connected has fundamentally altered the way we live our lives. And when it comes to shopping, our customers constantly have one foot in the digital world. And what our research identified were 3 distinct groups based on their perceived value of connectivity, and the findings are far from obvious or predictable. The relationship that each of these groups have with being connected, the type of device, and really importantly, their expectations from the brands trying to engage with them differs widely. And this filters through to a differing array of customer journey combinations, whether that's shopping in store, online, or on the move. It's important to note that these customer groups are based on the way they self-identify, in terms of the perceived value they place on being connected. And interestingly, it doesn't always correlate to their behaviour, which we'll come on to later. So, in terms of the 3 connectivity groups, let's start with the connectivity assumptive. This is a group that perceive the value of connectivity as low. They make up about 10% of shoppers. When asked how they value the importance of physical and digital channels at each stage of the customer journey, they prioritise physical channels above all other groups and also value physical more highly than digital channels at most stages of the journey. And here comes the intriguing part. They are typically younger consumers, aged between 16 and 24. The typical Gen Zs that conjure up images of being glued to their smartphones with AirPods attached to their ears. And we know that these groups spend a lot of time online, browsing, streaming content, and staying in contact with friends. And this is where the concept of perceived value is so important to emphasise. These consumers on the whole are digital natives, born into a digital world, having powerful smartphones and constant connectivity at their fingertips in their earliest memories. Put simply, they don't remember a time without the internet. They don't remember a period of dial-up modems, and they have no point of comparison for what life was like before the digital age. Their attitude to being connected and online is a given. It's their right. And so from the perspective of perhaps their parents, they take it for granted, as they can't recognise or appreciate the convenience, speed and value that it brings. They assume that connectivity is their right. The second group are the connectivity acknowledgers. They are, if you like, the middle group in the ranking of perceived value of connectivity. This audience state a more active appreciation of connecting digitally with brands, making up 30% of shoppers and are fairly responsive to what brands are doing online. This group tends to be a little older than the last group, aged between 25 and 45. They have an even gender split and tend to be working in full-time employment. They will listen to what brands have to say. There is a greater balance between the importance of digital and physical channels, valuing digital channels more highly during some stages of the customer journey, but physical channels more highly in others. For this group, they generally remember a time without the internet and an analogue age of shopping, where choice, price and accessibility were limited to physical destinations and opening hours. In other words, they acknowledge that connectivity is of value and the change that it has brought to their lives. And finally, we have the connectivity appreciative, which are comprised of consumers who attach the greatest weight of importance to being connected. These make up just over half of consumers who say that being connected is either very or extremely important to their lifestyles. This group is typically aged over 45, from affluent households and disproportionately female. They'll listen to what brands have to say and share, and will actively encourage them to provide feedback on topics that are important to them. Importantly, they don't take being connected for granted, and they therefore are appreciative of connectivity and the impact that this has on the customer journey. That sums up the 3 connected customer groups. When we take you through the stages of the journey they go on when they shop with you, we'll refer to them and the real differences in how they behave. We believe being aware of these 3 groups can help segment and engage different customer profiles in a more profitable way, especially when you combine that with other findings like how over a third of all consumers say that they cannot live without their smartphone. Knowing who to target and when could bring in big returns. Before we dive into the 5 stages of consumer behaviour for the 3 audiences, let's kick off with a poll. So, to start with, to what extent do you agree with the following statement? Customers who value connectivity with brands online the most will have the highest preference for using digital channels at the awareness and research stages of the customer journey. It will be interesting to see what you think about all of this as we take you through the first 2 stages. We'll come back to it at the end of the session and see if any of you in the group have changed your mind. You've seen the 3 connectivity audiences we're dealing with today. The connectivity assumptive, the connectivity acknowledgers, and the connectivity appreciative. Now, Rob and I are going to take you through the different stages that each of these audiences experience as they transition through the different stages of the customer journey. Stage 1 is all about awareness of products and brands. We asked respondents to assess the relative importance they attach to physical and digital channels during the awareness stage of the customer journey. So, for example, underlying digital channels were a number of options such as retailer websites, social media, price comparison sites, marketplaces, and others. What we found was a fairly even split, with 47% choosing digital and 45% preferring physical. The remainder was made up of those consumers valuing traditional media such as TV, press, and out of home. Within digital, retailer websites came out on top, with 22% preferring to visit them. This was followed by online marketplaces such as eBay and Amazon with 13% and independent websites with 7%. But really interestingly, when we looked at the connectivity assumptive group, these are the ones that valued physical channels the most. But paradoxically, they are also the group that admit to spending most time browsing online, In fact, 86% of this group said that they preferred looking at products on digital channels. And when you start to look at other audiences, the balance starts to shift the other way. And as we get to the connectivity appreciative group, they're the complete opposite, saying that they prefer online shopping to in-store, but admitting that they spend less time online than any other group. So there's a bit of a paradox here in terms of the value connectivity assumptive perceived to get from being connected and the extent to which it is used in their lives. We've identified a gap, if you like, between the perceived value that they attach to being connected and their actions in terms of how interwoven connectivity is in their lives. I think we can draw some useful parallels here between what behavioural economists call the intentions behaviour gap. The intentions behaviour gap helps explain why our best intentions, such as losing weight, are not always met with our actions, such as leading a healthy lifestyle and going to the gym. In a similar sense, this gap has emerged between the way some groups feel about the importance of connectivity and the actions of embracing it, and probably get the most benefit from it compared with other groups too. The one thing, however, that all audiences do have in common though, is that when talking about physical channels, all rate the high street as the place they value most highly.
Richard, that's really interesting actually, because I had a recent experience when I was buying some dog food online and I'd not completed the sale, but the retailer used the analytics and where I got to within the process to come back to me and to actually suggest how I might complete and some details of the purchase, which means that I went on and completed that purchase online. So it really shows you the power of the personalized data and the emails that can be sent.
Thanks, Rob. The reason younger consumers are more open to communications that are targeted, enabled and delivered using connected technology may be part of the same reason they are less overtly appreciative of that technology in the first place. It's just that it's so ingrained. They already conduct so many of their interactions online that brands communicating with them directly in this way feels perfectly natural too. Marks and Spencer's are already using this technology to increase in-store visits. They've used geo-targeting to identify shoppers with the M&S app installed on their phones, and then they send push notifications based on their browsing history. Fashion retailer Sea Salt worked with acoustic analytics to use behavioural insights on their website. This allowed them to look at how customers browsed, pinpoint any struggles that they had, and then send them personalised emails to make their shopping experience as smooth as possible.
But how has COVID-19 and the resulting lockdown affected things? Well, that's really interesting too. 44% of all customers agree that coronavirus is likely to cause long-term changes to their shopping habits. And I'm sure we're all in this bracket when you can see that 45% of us have purchased something online that they previously only bought in store. Now, we've seen that most shops have been open for the past 5 weeks, and it's something all retailers will have to keep an eye on over the next couple of months.
We now move on to the second section of the customer journey, research. There are many different ways consumers can do their own research, having identified a selection of products they may be interested in. Talking to friends and family can be a good way to get recommendations straight from the horse's mouth. Going in store to try on clothes, or even seeing how big a dining room table is and whether or not it will fit in the kitchen can help customers make up their mind when deciding whether or not to go ahead with a purchase. But by and far the most popular method of researching is doing it online. This could be looking at review websites, price comparison websites, or just looking for alternatives with favourite retailers. But increasingly, retail brands are leveraging technology to assist customers and create more frictionless journeys and shortening the path between awareness and purchase. For example, augmented reality apps are being used by furniture retailers like IKEA to help customers see the size and style of dining room tables actually in their front rooms. And even in in-store environments, brands like Adidas are teaming up with Snapchat to use augmented reality in intelligent and innovative ways, but more on that later. But overall, digital channels hold the most influence at the research stage of the customer journey than any other stage. 61% of shoppers we spoke to said that they preferred this method of research compared with anything else. And what's surprising is that all three audiences preferred this method, even the connectivity assumptive. There are, however, differences between each group. For example, both assumptive and acknowledgers are 5 times more likely to use their smartphone while in store. This can be to look up even more detail about the products they've seen, read what reviewers think, or even just see if there are different variants of the same product available online. Some even look to see if they can buy it cheaper elsewhere, but that's a different story for another time. With this in mind, and despite that they say they value connectivity less, they are also more likely to become annoyed if they can't get online easily in store. This can be due to lack of Wi-Fi or mobile phone signals. In fact, almost half of the assumptive group said that this was the case. Again, what we're seeing here is an inverse relationship between the amount consumers say they value being connected and their real-world behaviour. It's important that brands can bear this in mind when developing digital strategies and segmenting their audience. One of the biggest trends we've seen in online content are videos. They account for 80% of data transfer in the UK last year. In fact, 92% of UK internet access shows users visit YouTube at least once a month. This is only expected to rise as handheld devices become more powerful and 5G is rolled out. And these days, many users don't need headphones to get the most out of them, as most online videos feature subtitles, great to capture attentions on the go.
Thanks, Richard. Hopefully those findings have illuminated some of the behavioural differences that you need to think about when it comes to brand and product differentiation. But how can retailers close the gap between research channels and actually making the sale? And how can these different customer behaviours be used to an advantage? One way to intervene in the customer journey is through personalised promotions and communications. Technology solutions now allow retailers to provide personal messaging to smartphones, taking advantage of app data, location insights, and omni-channel messaging to both promote products and enable sales at the right time. Joining channels closely together is another way to make research a more profitable and enclosed part of the buyer journey. More stores are becoming experience centres. They're now providing customers with specific types of shopper experience, which I'll pass over to Richard to explain.
Thanks, Rob. Yes, creating meaningful experiences has become critical for retailers and a really important way to differentiate the proposition from their competitors. And arguably, the reason experiences have become so important is because we've reached a point of excess in the Western world. Following 2 decades of importing deflation from China and many other countries, prices across core categories such as clothing, footwear, electricals, homewares have consistently fallen in price, leading to an abundance of physical possessions in the UK. It's been termed peak stuff by many economists, and the cornerstone of this revolves around the notion of economic value and the economic value that consumers attach to material possessions has arguably eroded over time. If we just take a simple example of owning an iPad. The first iPad I purchased was great. It added significant economic value. It changed the way I browsed online, communicated with my parents on the other side of the world and the way I consumed media content. But as the iPod got older and I bought a second iPad, a third generation iPad, the economic value I attached to each iteration of iPad diminished. And if you take this concept and apply it to material possessions in general, it's left consumers wanting more. It's left them wanting something different, and arguably it's left them wanting experiences. And the economic data supports this. Over the last few decades, we've actually spent a smaller proportion of our expenditure on retail products, falling from about a third in the 1970s to about a quarter today, and we expect this to fall to around about 20% by 2028. And we actually think that experiences can be measured across 4 realms. We call them our 4 E's of experience: entertainment, education, environment, and escapism. And of course, these aren't discrete choices. What consumers want is a blend of all 4, depending on what they are buying, the price point, the location, how old they might be, and lots of other factors. But increasingly, brands are leveraging technology to drive better in-store experiences that span across the realms that I was referring to earlier. A great example of brands trying to enhance the in-store experience is Adidas and social media app Snapchat. They teamed up together to run a virtual launch of a new trainer range. Customers could try on these shoes simply by pointing their camera at their feet after scanning a snap code. Another was the pharmacist Boots. They launched a virtual beauty service which offered online video consultations with the No. 7 brand advisor. This came at a time when we were all in lockdown, so it was a great way for Boots to get their shoppers interested and engaged with them while physical stores were harder places to visit. The third stage is payment, and once customers have found your brand, compared the products, deliberated on the benefits, they move to the business end of the customer journey. Of course, in our constantly connected world, payment isn't the end of the story, but it's in the moment of action where the purchasing has to be frictionless. And of course, over the last decade, options relating to payments have erupted. It comes as second nature to purchase something online using your credit card for most customers. But other alternatives like buy now, pay later options have risen in popularity, offering customers a different channel to pay. But whatever the actual payment option, it has to align with what customers are looking for, or else they will seek out retailers who can. So when it comes to our research, most customers say that they prefer to pay through digital channels at 57% of the vote, compared to 43% for physical channels. This is hugely significant. It was only about 10 years ago that 5% of total online spending was done online. Last year, about 20% was spent online, and because of the impact of the coronavirus, we expect this to rise to 25% this year. For non-food, online penetration rates will be closer to a third, and our research shows that there is an appetite for these proportions to shift even further given the value and convenience that they offer to consumers. However, it's not quite as simple as retailers prioritising all of their focus towards digital payments. There are clear divergences between age groups, categories, price points, regions, and many other factors. So while a third of non-food spending may occur online this year, it's critical to consider the types of products that may lend themselves better to some channels depending on these factors. For example, higher value items such as expensive jewellery, kitchens or furniture will typically involve more considered purchases, where a greater amount of time is spent in the research phase than other low-valued items. Given the higher value and the more considered decision-making process, this can often involve an educational experience. Consumers like the reassurance of physical channels in order to ask questions and also overcome barriers around trust. Comparatively, commodity type products like a pack of 5 pens, or branded products like branded TVs or laptops, or even lower value items like clothing, purchasing conveniently online can often make more sense. However, thinking online and offline is of course too simplistic. In a constantly connected world, a customer might be in your store but still be completing a purchase digitally, even with a competitor. 47% of the connectivity assumptive have bought a product on their smartphone while in a physical store. This returns us to the point about loyalty. Bringing people successfully into your store and website in the first 2 stages of the customer journey no longer guarantees their custom. Customer loyalty takes more than just a fair price and relative marketing. Better payment options give flexibility throughout the buying process and one way to make yourself an attractive payment option. This explains the growth of buy now, pay later options like Klarna, ClearPay and Lay-By, preferred by 5% of our respondents. These let customers manage their cash flows more effectively by either spreading payments interest-free or deferring payments to a later date. While this may alter buying behaviour, for example, over-ordering clothes to try on at home, then returning the products they don't want before they've even had to pay for them, it also boosts loyalty and can improve the overall lifetime value of customers. This phenomenon of wardrobing shows how customers value the security of seeing and touching a product while also wanting the simple convenience of digital purchasing. Bedrooms have become changing rooms, enabling new ways of paying. Over to Rob now to talk about these behaviours and what it means for retailers.
Thanks for that, Richard. So, what are the retailers actually doing to drive loyalty and ongoing customer in such a fickle customer market? How can we help them? One thing to understand is that the trend is only going to go one way, and we're about to enter a new period of financial uncertainty. So price comparison and savviness will be on the rise. As customers themselves are trying to do with wardrobing, providing ways to make more personalised, secure purchase decisions can help you turn payment itself into a complete buying experience. Our own Gareth Turpin recently commented that real experience within the O2 stores are one reason why the easing of lockdown has seen customers return to our own stores. Payment gateways and secure connectivity can help protect customer payments, of course, but not having more ubiquitous connectivity will also improve customer perception of the ease and security of online payments. This is where Wi-Fi partners plus developing connectivity solutions like 5G will help, optimizing secure connected payments and increasing the customer confidence. Faster payments, both online and in-store, help to streamline the customer experience and reduce payment backlog and delays, something which will become more important as limits remain on customer volumes in-store due to social distancing. Similarly, developing capabilities like cashier-less stores and checkout-less payments, as some retailers have already started doing, adds more payment options for customers, whilst potentially making the stores safer themselves. Richard, have you got any examples of how brands are creating better experiences in practice?
Good question. And the truth is that retailers are powering ahead, making these trends work for their growth. Take Lego as an example. They have a clothing brand called Wear, and they came up with a very creative retail experience of their own. They created a pop-up shop in London where shoppers could scan the snap code via their Snapchat app, and using augmented reality, Lego then showed off their clothing range through the app alongside an interactive DJ booth and arcade machines. Shoppers could then purchase the clothing through their app for home delivery, completing an interactive and engaging shopping experience in the most convenient way and critically with no stock. Amazon and Alibaba have made big investments in creating more personalised purchasing environments online too, with innovations like bespoke web pages, dynamic pricing and targeted promotions. Retailers then need to think about how they can marry up the best of online and physical retailing to provide the optimum mix to customers.
Thanks, Richard. And now it's time for our second and final poll of the morning. We'll take a look at the answers to these at the end to see what people thought once we've been through the findings and whether this tallied with your expectations. So please submit online your answer to the following. To what extent do you agree with this statement? For fulfilment and returns, customers value speed over every other consideration. It'll be interesting to see what you think about this as we go through the next couple of stages. We'll be back at the end of the session to see if any of you change your mind or have any other comments.
After payments, the onus is back on you, the retailer, to get goods into the hands of customers quickly and conveniently, meeting and if not exceeding their expectations. While no one would argue that logistics and processes behind fulfilment are simple, customers' expectations of you are higher than ever before. Retailers now compete with next day delivery, same day delivery, instant click and collect services, while ordering cut-off times are being pushed back further and further. Just as with payments, fulfilment is no longer just a function of retail, but it's one of the best places to differentiate. Successful retailers will make clever partnerships and investments that will give their fulfilment services enough flexibility without spreading their resources too thin. What was particularly interesting about fulfilment stage in our research was that it was the only stage where physical channels were preferred overall to digital ones by 53% of shoppers. Of those physical channels, the most popular were local high streets, followed by shopping centres. So perhaps arguably talk of a death of the high street has been a little premature. And to an extent, this is undoubtedly true. The high street is going through a period of evolution where its purpose and positioning communities, along with the purpose of stores, is changing. High streets are evolving to better reflect the needs of the communities they serve, and this adjustment process takes time. So while footfall has reduced in many high streets up and down the UK, the right application of technology and innovation can kickstart better experiences, and they can more effectively serve customers with a more relevant proposition. Digital channels lag behind slightly at this stage, primarily because of instant gratification, leisurely shopping, and some distressed purchases where goods are needed immediately. But at this stage, click and collect is a convenient option for some, and aptly demonstrates the merging of physical and digital, being that we order online and pick up deliveries in store. Given that many consumers arrange online deliveries to their place of work and don't want the inconvenience of rearranging orders if they arrive when they're not at home, click and collect works for certain lifestyles. Nevertheless, home delivery was by far the biggest single option for fulfilling your products. There's a clear relationship between purchase and fulfilment, which again can be expected. 83% of shoppers said that they would go for home delivery if they were buying a product online. Similarly, while many customers now make online purchases in store, if they buy a product in store, they will normally take it with them. Delivery, though, remains a barrier for many customers to shop online, mainly due to price. Cheaper delivery and free returns were two of the biggest factors our research revealed that would encourage people to shop online more frequently, at 43% and 40% respectively. Once again, our customers are too price savvy not to be influenced by the actual cost of delivery, as well as its convenience. The coronavirus situation, however, marks another shift in favour of digital fulfilment, likely to be permanent. Many of our respondents were undecided or hesitant about returning to stores after lockdown. Needless to say, our connectivity assumptive were a little more intrepid, with 27% saying they would return immediately.
Thanks for that, Richard. Following on from what Richard was just saying, we've actually got some insight from our own Head of Operations, Alistair Stewart, on what we've seen since the reopening of our O2 stores since the lockdown. Let's take a listen to Alistair's feedback.
Going forward, what we clearly can see is that a lot of the customers that came to us online have stayed online, but that hasn't affected the customers that have come back to us from an operating point of view in stores. We were very keen to make sure we opened every store that we could, where we could, and we achieved that. And as a result, customers have come back to us, and we're now seeing a good flow of customers and footfall into our store operation. And we've also managed to retain a good number of the customers that migrated to us online, either from other competitors or from other channels. And so, we do feel like we're coming out of the COVID crisis as we are in good shape.
We've also spoken to Jim, who's one of our in-store gurus in our Sunderland store, about how life in the store has changed since we've reopened after the lockdown, and how customers are changing their behaviour.
The online trend with customers buying has definitely changed from a store perspective. So customers would normally come in, if we didn't have a phone in stock, we could order it from another store or we could reserve it for the next delivery. And customers normally would be more than happy with that. But what we're finding now is, and this is all different generations, is a customer will come in, we don't have the item in stock, which is unusual, but it does happen. And they'll say, no worries, I'll buy that online tonight, or I'll phone up. So there's definitely a trend there.
It's really interesting to see how customers are reverting automatically to online orders as an alternative for payment and fulfilment since lockdown lifted. So how can retailers take advantage of these customer trends to make fulfilment outstanding? One growth area could be tracking. Connectivity assumptive were particularly keen for this to be a feature of their delivery experience, with 2/3 of them indicating a preference. It can also be supported by broader connectivity services like IoT and 5G, keeping everything joined up and ensuring real-time tracking of inventory and deliveries. That would also help the retailers be more accurate when it comes to providing customer updates on deliveries. The role of physical retail is also important to bear in mind. As with the payment stage, the need to test, touch and see products before keeping them is an important consideration that means your stores are still crucial if you get the experience right. Again, being better able to predict customer demand and to track stock helps you to allocate resources and communication to the right people, supporting a better end-to-end fulfillment model.
Absolutely. Thanks, Rob. Partnerships have become one quick and effective route for many retailers attempting to inject efficiency and scale into their fulfilment setups. Next, joined up with Amazon to trial a new click and collect service, Counter, where Amazon provided scannable barcodes for Next staff to quickly process collection in store. This really shows how fulfilment is increasingly cross-channel, code-dependent on different enterprises. It's also shown by the eBay and Sainsbury's Argos partnership, which offers collection of purchases for eBay customers from Argos stores. Innovations are also happening with delivery services to create more robust operations and slicker customer experiences. We can see that in the work, Tesco and Co-op are doing some interesting experimenting with tech firm Starship Technologies to make robotic automated vehicle delivery a reality. They saw their 100,000th delivery of this type in the spring, showing great progress. The race for even faster fulfilment can likewise be seen in the Very Group's new state-of-the-art centre to extend cut-off day for next day deliveries on their website to midnight. Grocers, meanwhile, have been focusing their efforts on scaling fast deliveries by working with experts. Deliveroo, for example, work with Aldi, M&S, Majestic Wines, McColl's and Morrison's to support their home delivery network during lockdown. And finally, Waitrose and Yale have been testing in-home delivery of groceries using technologies like AI, mobile apps and smart locking systems to let delivery drivers make in-home deliveries in a customer's absence. Clearly, customers trust retailers more to provide fast, secure fulfilment services. And with the right ideas and focus, some businesses are truly delivering against those expectations. The service and return stage is the final stage of the customer journey and your chance to leave a lasting impression. To provide great after-sales experiences that meet your customers' needs and delight them is crucial. The priorities for customers and therefore for retailers at this point broadly correlates to the previous stage. Customers want fast and easy returns and to not pay for goods which they don't want. But as well as returns, they also talk about the care which customers receive after the sale in general. This, as with other points in the customer journey, benefits from being personalised, and so predicting things like return rates down to an individual level to be responsive early is a priority for many retailers. And with return rates topping 30 to 40% in some retail sectors, fashion for instance, it's not an insignificant rate of interaction with your brand. Once again, the balance has to be struck between speed, empathy, and being able to deliver at scale. First off, let's look at the stats. There's a clear correlation between attitude to connectivity and the desire for speed of resolution when thinking about returns. Connectivity Assumptive and Acknowledgers group valued speed of resolution the most, and while the Appreciative group did value speed, they were also more likely to say that quality matters more. This might relate to the types of consumption we discussed earlier. If you're more likely to be a wardrober, buying items at scale with the deliberate intention of returning things you don't want, then it would make sense that you valued ease of returns and speed of returns more highly in the overall process. It's still important to consider the other side of the coin though, and think about those customers who want their after-sales experience to be properly resolved more than just quickly. This is where balance is needed. Automation in the returns and after-sales process can of course improve the scale and speed at which issues are resolved, but people still need to feel listened to and get the human reassurance where it's needed. But without an intuitive, customer-led approach to automation, you might run the risk of making your service feel impersonal. But without an intuitive, customer-led approach to automation, you might run the risk of making the service you provide feel impersonal and your customers feel ignored. Shoppers still want to feel empathised with, so make the most of your data and insights to give every customer a unique after-sales experience with your brand.
Thanks, Richard. Some brilliant insights there. For retailers, the challenge is reaching that balance to get long-term retention and loyalty from customers. Quality at low cost is a challenge for all businesses, but even more so when automated interactions can be so fraught with potential problems. Capgemini recently found that nearly 2/3, 62% of customers actively want their automated interactions, such as with chatbots, to feel more human-like. We also found that many customers prioritise a human service interaction over getting their issue fixed quickly. This was more prevalent amongst the connectivity appreciative than the assumptive and the acknowledger groups. But how are retailers finding this balance? How can we make sure that customers are dealt with fast and never left hanging, but also at the same time building personal connections? Integrating AI chatbots into customer services processes supports with speed of resolution. But to ensure these interactions satisfy customers and make them feel heard, they need to make the best of customer data to personalise and target the actions we take. Automated messaging service powered by customer insight can also help retailers follow up on fulfilment and returns queries in a far more personal way. Another challenge is cost. You will know that currently returns cost the UK industry about £60 billion every year. Collectively, we've responded by investing more in our supply chains. 41% of retailers, for example, have invested between 11 to 20% more in their supply chains over the past 3 years. Some retailers are now working to make more of their existing locations and stores. For example, Next saw 80% of their returns going through stores last year, reducing the emphasis on extra warehousing and locations. So Richard, how else are retailers trying to get ahead of their customers' expectations?
To predict customer service needs, retailers are also turning to third-party solutions such as Rebound and ReturnSense, which use purchasing history to judge how likely a return is, then alerting retailers if it seems probable. Another company, Zigzag, have also begun to use sales history and predictive analytics to direct returned products to the stores where resale is more likely, cutting costs to up to 50%. That brings us to the end of the analysis for Stage 5. As with others, we've seen that not all customers require the same approach, and that technology can help us not only improve our promises to customers, but deliver on them better too.
Thanks, Richard. So what have we learned from our deep dive into the connected customer journey? Well, for one, we can see that there's no simple route to delivering better retail experiences on either digital or physical channels. Modern customers are too able and willing to flip between this and that channel and multiple retailers for a single approach to be effective. Retailers need to learn from innovations and the successes of the businesses who have been able to bring physical and digital touchpoints together. A unified approach that gives customers the best of both speedy deliveries with a human touch.
Thanks, Rob. That's been really, really helpful and some really fascinating insights. We've covered the complete customer journey right from awareness to service and returns, and it's revealed some fascinating insights and hopefully some surprises too. I hope what's come across loud and clear is that technology, innovation, big data, and of course connectivity is merging together physical and digital realms, and it's really empowering consumers to shop in the manner that they want to shop, whether that's online, in store, on the move, in whatever way that they want to, that creates the most frictionless path to purchase for them. We've seen retailers who have invested in the right technologies really benefit from realigning their proposition to a new normal that is emerging for customers. And a good example of this has been Boots, where they've had their beauty service online and really capitalised on the environment, the new environment for retail. We've also seen that connectivity and online platforms have actually created new customer segments based on connectivity itself. Each of the three customer journey types value digital and physical channels differently depending on what stage of the customer journey they are actually on. It's only at the research stage of the customer journey that all customer types value digital channels over physical ones, and at the fulfillment stage of the customer journey, that's where consumers have much more preference over physical channels. But successful retailers will be those that can provide meaningful customer experiences and really leverage technology, connectivity, and also Internet of Things, and really bring together that merging of the two sides of the customer journey. Retailers who can increase customer engagement by augmenting these in-store experiences are already benefiting. Retailers need to react quickly, though. They need to react quickly to this new normal that is emerging, because if they don't, they will lose customers to retailers that do. So looking into the future and in the long term, there are going to be significant changes that COVID-19 will bring about across the customer journey, and we're just heading into what is likely to be a deep recession in the UK. The reality, unfortunately, is that many retailers are likely to fall into administration, and we've already had announcements from the likes of Boots, John Lewis, Burberry, Halfords, Mulberry, who have all said they're either closing stores or reducing the number of staff as they look to reposition their business. Part of this will be enhancing their digital propositions and preparedness for the new wave of disruption that is likely to be generated from the ongoing challenges presented from COVID-19. But there's a couple of examples where retailers have really shifted their proposition, in some case significantly, to adapt to these new challenges. For example, Poundland have said that they are looking at doing their first online delivery as early as next year. John Lewis has launched a virtual personal shopping service from its branch in Southampton, and Peter Jones in London, where they're taking 30-minute booking slots and using Zoom to facilitate this personal shopper experience. Ocado have raised almost £1 billion from the market to invest in what they see as this long-term shift towards online food ordering. And also Hermes, the delivery company, the courier company, has invested 100 million and created over 10,000 new jobs as they meet the demands of greater online shopping. I do passionately believe that this disruption creates opportunity for retailers. And for retailers, the challenge will be to pivot their proposition to align to a new set of customer expectations that have emerged out of this crisis. But hopefully our research would have shone some light into how retailers will be able to do this. Okay, so we will now turn our attention to what I'm sure all of you have been waiting for, which is the results of our poll questions. So the first poll question that we asked was around customers who value connectivity with brands online the most, and whether or not they will have the highest preference for using digital channels for awareness and research. Well, 78% of you agreed, and 22% of you strongly agreed, which is great news because you are all correct. The connectivity appreciative group placed more value on digital channels across the awareness and research stage. And actually, it was the research stage where all consumers, their perception of value of connectivity was highest in the research stage across all consumers, across all consumer groups at that particular stage of the customer journey. And the second poll question was around fulfillment and returns, and whether customers valued speed over every other consideration. 90% of you agreed that speed was the more important consideration. 10% of you disagreed, and the answer is you're both right in some senses, because it really depends on the type of customer. Overall, what we saw is the connectivity appreciative group valued the quality of resolution above speed, but other groups valued speed. And also what we saw is quite a large polarization between age groups as well. So what we found is that younger consumers generally valued the speed of resolution much higher than older consumers who valued valued the quality of the resolution. But a lot of this comes down to the type of product that they are buying, and also the nature of their purchases as well. For example, which we picked up on in the presentation, was whether or not consumers are over-ordering clothing, for example, to use their bedrooms as a changing room, and then send other unwanted items back, where speed of resolution is actually aligned better to their behaviours. Right, I will now hand over to Rob, who's going to host our Q&A session.
Thank you, Richard. Some really great insight and examples there from Richard on how the high street is changing and how retail is changing, you know, since the pandemic, and actually how that change is accelerating because of the pandemic. So thank you for that insight, Richard. I would like to also say thank you for posting questions. We've had a number of questions come in, which myself and Richard will go through now. As I said, please continue to post. We'll either answer now, or if we can't get to your question, what we will do is we will get back to you with the answer after the end of the session this morning. So thank you for posting the questions, and thank you for taking part in the poll and making this morning as interactive as possible. So the first question is probably one for you, Richard, actually, given your expertise. So at the awareness stage, what the research was saying is that the high street is still the most popular physical destination at that stage. Why is that the case? What's your view on why that may well be the case?
I think what it really shows is how powerful convenience is as a driver. And actually, if you look at the different physical channels of retail and look at the frequency that consumers visit these different channels, high street comes out as the most frequently visited physical destination, being that it's typically close to home, and consumers can easily access the high street. So I think it shows that convenience is a really critical driver. I think the other important consideration to bear in mind is that for high streets that continue to thrive, it just shows that there's an opportunity for high streets to repurpose themselves to create a really immersive shopping experience, where consumers can genuinely get out, they can meet friends, they can meet family, and the retail proposition might not be as heavily weighted as it was 10 years ago, but with the right mix of leisure, with hospitality and retail, with the right mix, it can create a good gravitational pull for consumers to go back onto the high street. And importantly, over the last 5 years or so, there's been a dramatic drop in rents. Leases have become much more flexible, and actually, what we've seen in terms of shop numbers is that if there's growth in shop numbers across high streets, it's all coming through independents. And so, because of the characteristics that I've just explained, it's changed the economics of running stores, and it's creating a healthy churn of independents. And that's more reflective of the local communities that they serve as well. So it's a good way of bringing about awareness if the high street offers that great proposition.
Great, thank you for that, Richard. You know, it's very clear that things are changing. So the next question that's come in, probably one for myself actually, is somebody's asked, do you think that the digital channels will become more influential because of the impact of COVID-19? Well, I'll pass over to Richard just to your view on this one in a sec, Richard, as well. But I think the answer to that is undoubtedly. I think actually what, just linking to the last question, actually, we've seen is that people are now actually having to get their inspiration and their ideas online as opposed to the physical experience of going in store. So, you know, people are actually utilizing digital devices to actually do that research and to get the experience. And I think that's one way that the digital channels will become more influential post-COVID. there's lots of other things that I think will actually happen. You know, we touched about payments in the research, and actually, you know, we've already seen the move away from cash into payment channels as well, digital payment channels becoming more important. So, you know, my view is absolutely, you know, digitization is going to accelerate because of COVID-19, and we've seen a great deal of number of examples of how that is happening. Richard, I'm not sure if there's anything you want to add to that, given your perspective.
Yeah, no, I think all of what you've said, I completely agree with. What I'd add is just reference to some of the research that we've done, which shows that 45% of consumers have shopped online within a retail category that they have previously only ever purchased in store. So there's this new wave of consumers who are getting over those initial barriers of setting up online accounts, payment details, and also getting over issues of trust. And for some of these consumers, and my view would be for a significant proportion of these consumers, that exposure to a new customer journey will become permanent for some groups.
Okay, thank you for that. Next question coming in, again, probably one for us at O2. What is the best way, in your experience, to introduce digital technologies in store? Which ones, are most customer focused? Now, again, we've seen a great number of different applications and different experiences coming through. And I think actually, we saw a video earlier from Jim in Sunderland talking about how we've reopened the stores from an O2 point of view. And I think when you're opening stores and you're utilizing the digital technology in store, it really has to give the customer a benefit. One of the technologies that we've used in store since opening up is Quidini, which is an application to help in queuing. Now, I had a colleague who was telling me last week that they went to the Trafford Centre and there was a half-mile queue outside. Nobody is going to wait in the pouring rain in the shopping centre to go in. So Quidini actually helps us to manage the queuing experience, so people can go off and do other things and then come in when they're ready. So my view is digital technologies in store are going to be really useful where they give customers an absolute benefit. And I think that also applies to in-store Wi-Fi. What we've seen is that most retailers really accept that they need in-store Wi-Fi. But actually, what the customer also wants is good quality, high-speed customer Wi-Fi, where they actually really know what's happening to their data and they understand what they've signed up to in terms of the data. So my answer to the question in terms of digital technologies is, it really has got to give the customer a benefit. And also has to, obviously, from a retailer's point of view at the moment, have a clear return on the investment. Margins are very slight. So anything that the retailers are doing at the moment to invest in digital technologies needs to make sure that it gets a clear return on the investment. Again, Richard, is there anything you want to add to that? Any examples you've seen?
Yeah, I'll probably just add a slightly different take as well. Just saying that there's lots of different stakeholders in the process as well. So not only retailers need to invest in kind of digital technologies in store, but then there's also landlords within certain retail schemes that should be working alongside retailers to try to utilize this technology to drive better engagement, higher levels of footfall. And the same can be said for local authorities as well that are within that catchment area. So different stakeholders need to work together to try to create kind of a better relevance within the retail schemes and a sense of community and space.
Thanks, Richard. Again, another one for you, Richard. So we're seeing dynamic pricing becoming more accepted in certain sectors. And actually, obviously, you've got the change in VAT in certain sectors as well that may well actually influence that. I don't know. But, dynamic pricing is fairly established in the hotel trade. or booking flights, for example. Do you think it's an influence that's going to come into retail? And if so, what impact would it have?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's fair to say that it's already here. And actually, what we saw during the pandemic is that some marketplaces, example Amazon or eBay, they saw significant changes in the level of price due to elevated and heightened levels of demand. So in many instances, dynamic pricing in retail is already here, and it's just whether or not retailers can, or should I phrase it in a slightly different way, is whether or not consumers actually see the value in dynamic pricing and whether it's to the benefit of them or not. And I think the issue for retailers, or the risk that they run, is whether or not consumers feel that they are being discriminated against in terms of the prices that are offered to them, based on data, based on browsing history, based on perhaps what part of the country they live in. So there's a really fine line to balance here, and retailers could risk frustrating and upsetting customers if they don't feel like they're getting a good deal, if they feel like in some way they are being discriminated against. But I do think that that retailers using big data, using AI now and in the future, it's not just about stock levels or price or stock levels or levels of demand. Increasingly, it would be pricing levels would be based around other characteristics as well. So yeah, I do think that it will become more commonplace within the sector.
Thank you for that. Next question that's just come in, talking about customers' purchasing habits, and again going back to some of the insight we've seen earlier on today. So it's probably one for me, but again, Richard, if you've got a view, that would be really good. Why do customers think that on the whole, why do you think on the whole that customers prefer purchasing online but having that physical purchase fulfilled physically? Well, I think this is the fact that customers can actually do the research. They can actually look and research in the comfort of their own home, using the devices that they choose to use. But actually, I think there's still the fact that the immediacy of going into a store and having the fulfillment is that draw to the customer. The other benefit, obviously, that brings is actually there and then, if the product is not what is described as, or it doesn't fit or whatever, it does mean that the customer actually can do that returns process there and then without actually having to go back and go through all of the changes that they would need to return that product. So again, I think it comes down to the fact that customers really do quite enjoy utilizing digital products and getting more less adverse to to looking online and doing comparisons, and then actually physically picking up the product in store. Richard, any comments you've got on that?
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think that also it really depends on many other factors, like the type of product that you're buying, potentially your age group, or essentially the shopper mission. So in many instances, if it's a distressed purchase, then it's all about instant access to products and goods in a frictionless way, and also instant gratification for other parts of the market where it's about the kind of the overall experience and walking away with a product from store. So it really depends on different types of products. But I think overall, Rob, you nailed it with your first comment, which this is about instant gratification, and shopping's always been a pleasurable thing for consumers, and instant gratification is is one of those key areas.
Great, thank you, Richard. Actually, I've got a nice tough one for you here as well, so I'll pass this one straight over to you, Richard. If digital is becoming more important and influential, what's your view on the monopolies and the dominance of Google and Facebook, and what's their impact on the retail experience?
Okay, thanks for that, Rob. Nicely averted. I think what's interesting about that is that it comes around. For me, a lot of this is around barriers to entry. And over the last decade or so, what we've seen is an explosion of nimble online brands that have been able to reach out to customers in a sophisticated but digitally centric way. And in many ways, Google and Facebook have become the digital landlords, where the cost per acquisition of customers has been one of the key, the key barriers to entry for some retailers, for some brands and retailers. And so the quick answer is that they are going to become much more influential, and that won't change. But it's also important to appreciate that we live in a dynamic industry, and there are other social media platforms, TikTok being a good example, where retailers and brands, and another one would be Etsy, where small independent retailers are starting on these platforms, and it gives them the opportunity to reach out to international markets. It gives them a platform to grow their brand on, and brands are just being driven completely through social media strategies on Instagram. So there are lots of opportunities, but yeah, the dominance of Google and Facebook will continue to create some of those barriers to entry that I mentioned before.
Thank you. Appreciate that. A couple more questions, and then we'll wrap up. So again, probably one for both of us, actually, Richard. Do you think that the question's been posed? Do you think that COVID-19 will lead to a permanent change in the amount of shopping we do online? I know we touched on some of this in some of the research. And the second part of that, do you think actually it will undermine the importance of physical retail? So the impact of COVID-19, Richard?
I mean, the short answer is, yeah. My belief is that there will be a permanent change in shopping habits. Some of this we touched on earlier. I think about the kind of the new cohorts that are experiencing a new customer journey. I think the wider point, though, is that some of this is going to be demand-led, and some of this will be supply-led. And the supply side of things is whether or not there will be a wave of retail failures over the coming 6 to 12 months because of this impact, and just how critical it is going to be for retailers to restructure their businesses. And a lot of that will involve cutting back on the number of stores, cutting back on the number of people, and essentially what we are going to be left with after the pandemic is a smaller sector, but a more resilient sector, and it's likely to have a fewer number of stores as well. Some of those characteristics will drive a greater proportion of sales online, and through the nature of it being supply-led, there will be that permanent change within the industry. But again, I think it's important to stress that it's not all doom and gloom. It's about reinventing the retail experience within the stores. And actually, the purpose of stores it was changing over the last few years, especially over the last decade. But actually, that will continue to be accelerated. And the purpose of stores will be seen in many cases more as a media channel, more as a marketing expense, where stores are seen as a cost per acquisition of customers. So whether or not customers actually buy things in store, or they are there for the experience and then continue their customer journey online, and the store is mainly built around the brand experience, and seen, like I say, as a marketing expense. It's those kinds of complexities that I think will play out over the longer term.
Thank you for that. I think actually from an O2 from an O2 point of view, you know, undoubtedly, as Richard says, COVID-19 will change the mix of online and retail shopping. But I think from an O2 point of view, what we've seen from a lot of physical retailers is they're having to change the experience in store. And actually, connectivity is one of the ways that they can do that. You know, we've got 5G coming down the road, or actually here now, and the Wi-Fi experience is more important as you put applications in on people's phones to manage social distancing and the payments. So, you know, undoubtedly the way that we shop in store is going to change. And actually, you know, what we've seen from retailers, even over the last couple of months, is some really good innovation as to how they are adapting to that and how they're using clever applications to manage that. So, you know, it's you know, as Richard says, I think the retailers that will benefit are the ones that actually can change quickly. So let's just do one final question. And actually, you know, it's a nice one to end on, actually, Richard. What success stories have you seen from retailers that are merging the physical and the digital worlds to create a better experience? What good examples have you seen from that?
I mean, look, there are many examples of retailers that have done a really good job. I think JD Sports is a great example, where they have developed almost like a cult following, where they're using music and entertainment to really drive a loyal customer base. And they are using their social media presence to drive traffic in store. And they're also using exclusivity as well. So they're partnering with whether it's celebrities or getting specific deals with major brands for exclusivity over particular lines. But then they're using social media to leverage the awareness part of the customer journey to drive customers back into store. And if you go into JD Sports on Oxford Street as an example, then you see the giant digital panels on screen where you can select through an extended range of all of their products. You can order things on a digital platform within store, and also it's just the experience is great. You know, they've got a kind of an elevator where all of the shoes come up from the basement that can then come up, and you can see it through a glass showcase piece. So it's just about, you know, drawing together all of those different elements of connectivity and bringing that into the in-store experience as well. And of course, we had that example around Adidas and Snapchat, which again really highlights just how easily mergeable the physical and digital world can be, and how it can be applied as well.
Thank you for that, Richard. It's certainly moved on from the days where you were buying your jeans in Burton's and the experience that you used to have then. So really interesting to hear. So look, a big thank you for all the questions coming in this morning. There are a couple that we've not actually managed to get to, so apologies for that. And we will definitely come back after the event and I'll try and answer the questions for you. As I say, big thank you for posing those questions and also taking part in the poll this morning. So let me just talk about the report. Over the next couple of days, somebody from O2 will contact you and give you access to the report. And hopefully you'll find that as informative and insightful as we have found. So as I say, over the next couple of days, we will be sharing that with you. And please carry on the journey of giving us feedback either through the social channels or through us at O2. Well, it just leaves me to say a big thank you for you for attending. I appreciate, as I said at the start, that, you know, a couple of hours out of your day in this environment is a big investment, and we hope that you found this worthwhile. So a big thank you for attending and being with us this morning. I also want to say a big thank you to Richard and the team at Retail Economics for conducting the report and actually supporting us here this morning in going through the report and actually pulling out some really good examples of the customer behavior. So thank you to Richard and the team at Retail Economics. Well, that's it from me. I just want to say a big thank you on behalf of us at O2 as well for you two attending. Please carry on the journey online and with us directly. But from us, thank you.